General Sir Archibald James Murray GCMG, CVO/DSO was a British Army officer who served in the Second Boer War and the First World War. He was Chief of Staff to the British Expeditionary Force in August 1914 but appears to have suffered a physical breakdown in the retreat from Mons, and was required to step down from the position in January 1915. After serving as Deputy Chief of the Imperial General Staff for much of 1915, he was briefly Chief of the Imperial General Staff from September to December 1915. He was subsequently Commander-in-Chief of the Egyptian Expeditionary Force from January 1916 to June 1917, in which role he laid the military foundation for the defeat and destruction of the Ottoman Empire in the Arabian Peninsula and the Levant. Army career. Born the son of Charles Murray and Anne Murray, and educated at Cheltenham College and the Royal Military College, Sandhurst, Archibald Murray was commissioned into the 27th Regiment on 13 August 1879. He was appointed adjutant of his regiment on 12 February 1886. After promotion to captain on 1 July 1887 and taking part in the suppression of a Zulu uprising in 1888, he became adjutant of the 4th Battalion, the Bedfordshire Regiment on 15 December 1890. He attended Staff College, Camberley in 1897. Promoted to Major on 1 June 1898, Murray served in the Second Boer War as Deputy Assistant Adjutant General for Intelligence in Natal from 9 October 1899 and then as Chief of Staff to the Commander there. He took part in the withdrawal from Dundee and then the Siege of Ladysmith in late 1899 and became Senior Staff Officer to Sir Archibald Hunter, General Officer commanding 10th Division. Early in 1900, he was appointed Assistant Adjutant General on 6 March 1900, promoted to Lieutenant Colonel on 29 October 1900 and awarded the Distinguished Service Order on 29 November 1900. He was again mentioned in dispatches in February 1901. Murray was appointed Commanding Officer of the 2nd Battalion Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers, stationed in India in October 1901, but never took up this position. He was deployed to Northern Transvaal in February 1902 where he was seriously wounded in April 1902 and mentioned in dispatches once more in July 1902. After the end of hostilities in South Africa, he returned to England in June 1902, and became Assistant Adjutant General at Headquarters 1st Division at Aldershot on 3 November 1902. Promoted to Colonel on 29 October 1903, he was appointed a Companion of the Order of the Bath in the King's Birthday Honours 1904 and a Commander of the Royal Victorian Order on 12 June 1907. Murray became Director of Military Training at the War Office on 9 November 1907 and, having been promoted to Major General on 13 July 1910, he was advanced to Knight Commander of the Order of the Bath in the Coronation Honours in June 1911. He also took part in the procession for the coronation of King George V on the 22nd of June 1911. Murray became Inspector of Infantry on 9 December 1912. At the General Staff Conference in January 1914, he rejected proposals to adopt what he saw as a stereotyped French fire and movement doctrine. He then briefly commanded 2nd Division from 1 February 1914. Chief of Staff, British Expeditionary Force, France and Belgium. Appointment. When the First World War started in July 1914, Murray was not appointed Quartermaster General of the British Expeditionary Force as was originally intended. Instead he became Chief of Staff. Murray had already earned a high reputation as a staff officer in South Africa and under French at the War Office. It is sometimes claimed that Murray was given the position largely because French's initial choice for the post, Wilson, was vetoed because of his role in the Curragh affair. Although this claim was made after the war by Edmunds, Kirk and Murray, there is no contemporary evidence, even in Wilson's diary, to confirm it. Wilson, Sir John French and Murray crossed to France on the 14th of August. The code books had been left behind in London, and Lieutenant Spears had to go back to London for another set. He returned to find Murray at Reims trying to unravel the strategic situation of the German Empire's army's invasion of France on a set of large maps spread out upon the floor of his hotel room, on all fours, dressed only in his underwear, whilst chambermaids came and went. Retreat from Mons. During the retreat of August 1914, the BEF staff, who had not rehearsed the roles, performed poorly. French was a dynamic leader but no manager. Robertson and Kirk recorded that Murray knew little of the plans which Wilson had drawn up with the French and had to work with a staff almost entirely staffed from the Directorate, who were used to working with Wilson. This staff included Colonel Harper, GSO-1. Murray summoned the Corps Chiefs of Staff at around 1 a.m. on the 24th of August, and ordered them to retreat, but gave them no detailed plans, leaving them to work out the details themselves. French agreed to Haig's request that First Corps retreat east of the Forest of Mormal without, apparently, Smith-Dorrien being asked or informed. On the 24th of August, Harper refused to do anything for Murray, so that Lord Locke had to write messages even though it was not his job. Locke wrote in his diary for the day that Murray was by nature petulant and difficult to work with. Murray and his staff were working flat out in intense heat at Bavaria, and recorded that he had passed 24 hours without undressing or sleeping. Smith-Dorrien visited GHQ to request detailed orders on the evening of the 24th of August, and had to bully Murray into issuing orders for Second Corps retreat to Le Cateau. Murray noted in his diary that GHQ had moved back from Le Cateau to St-Quentin and that First Corps was being heavily engaged by night, making no mention of what Second Corps were up to. When 4th Division arrived, Snow's orders were to help prepare a defensive position on the Cambrai-Le Cateau position, as GHQ had no idea of the seriousness of the situation facing Second Corps. 4th Division was eventually able to participate in the Battle of Le Cateau. The news that Smith-Dorrien planned to stand and fight at Le Cateau reached GHQ at 5 a.m. on the 26th of August. French was woken from his sleep, and insisting that Murray not be woken, sent Smith-Dorrien an ambiguous message that he had a free hand as to the method by which he fell back, which Smith-Dorrien took as permission to fight. Murray appears to have suffered some kind of physical collapse round about this time, although the details differ between different eyewitness accounts. Wilson recorded that Murray had completely broken down, had been given morphia or some other drug which made him incapable of work, and when told of Smith-Dorrien's decision to stand and fight, promptly got a fainting fit. Spears' recollection was that Murray had collapsed with a weak pulse, but did not actually faint. When told earlier during the same night that the Germans had fallen upon Haig's First Corps at Landraces, Spears read that Murray was too ill to attend the meeting of Sir John French with Joffre and Lanrezac on the 26th of August, although Touraine has him attending this meeting. General Macready later recorded that Murray fainted at his desk whilst working at Noyon. Wilson returned to GHQ on the 29th of August from a visit to Joffre to find, he claimed, a perfect debacle, with Murray leading the fight. On the 4th of September, Murray had an important meeting with Gallieni and Mornay to discuss the planned Allied counterattack which would become the First Battle of the Marne. Murray had no idea when Sir John, who was out visiting British First Corps, was to return and was unwilling to make any decision in his absence. After a 3-hour meeting, a provisional agreement was drawn up. The French came away with the impression that the British would not cooperate and that Murray had une grande repugnance for them, but he did in fact pass the plans along to Sir John. Whilst this was going on, Wilson was negotiating separate plans with Franchet d'Espery. Wilson noted that French and Murray were out motoring and playing the ass all day. He had to intercede to prevent French from sacking Harper, but a week later recorded that Murray and Harper argued constantly. After a month, Murray was still talking of "my men" and "S-men," which Wilson thought rather sad and deplorable. Wilson thought French and Murray were, between them, quite unable to size up a position and to act with constancy for 24 hours. Murray complained to Victor Hugo about Wilson, but also told Wilson that French was getting more unreasonable and asked Wilson whether he should resign. Wilson informed Billy Lambton, French's secretary, of both of these incidents. Murray also complained and threatened to resign when Wilson amended one of his orders without telling him. Murray later wrote, "Why did I stay with War Office clique when I knew I was not wanted? I wanted to see Sir John through. I had been so many years with him, and knew better than anyone how his health, temper and temperament rendered him unfit, in my opinion, for the crisis we had to face. The senior members entirely ignored me, as far as possible, continually thwarted me, even altered my instructions." Quote. He also claimed that Wilson's disloyalty had left him the impossible job of managing Sir John alone. Rawlinson noted in his diary that Murray became a cipher at GHQ, was disliked by his subordinates, and that Sir John French often ignored his staff, chiefly because Murray is incapable of managing them and getting any good work out of them. Edmonds later claimed that Murray sometimes falsified the timing of orders, but he was given away by the time stamp which the duty clerk placed on them. Removal at the end of November and again in mid-December. French told Wilson he was thinking of moving Murray to a corps command. Asquith and Kitchener forbade French to replace Murray with Wilson. Wilson claimed to have heard Joffre, on a visit to GHQ, complain that it was a pity that Murray had not been removed. Murray was sent off sick for a month and French demanded his resignation, despite Murray insisting that he only needed to take a few days off. Wilson was widely suspected of having plotted for Murray's removal in the vain hope of replacing him, but the job went to Robertson. Although a sore throat prevented him seeing Murray off, French wrote to him saying he hoped to see him back as an army commander before long. Haig read that Murray was a kindly fellow but not a practical man in the field. A staff officer, Brigadier General Philip Howell, wrote to his wife that Murray had been incompetent, cantankerous, timid and quite useless. The official historian Edmonds later described him as a complete non-entity. Richard Holmes described him as an intelligent, cultivated man who had not yet recovered from a stomach wound in South Africa. Chief of the Imperial General Staff. He was made Deputy Chief of the Imperial General Staff on the 10th of February 1915 and was appointed a Knight Commander of the Order of St. Michael and St. George on the 18th of February 1915. As Deputy Sigs, Murray's responsibility was training and organizing the new armies, a job requiring much travel. Murray became Chief of the Imperial General Staff on the 26th of September 1915. He was promoted to permanent lieutenant general on the 28th of October 1915. After the war he wrote to Ian Hamilton, criticizing Kitchener in harsh terms, writing that he seldom told the absolute, the truth and the whole truth, and that it was not until he left for his inspection of the Dardanelles that Murray was able to inform the cabinet that volunteering had fallen far below the level needed to maintain a BEF of 70 divisions, requiring the introduction of conscription. The cabinet insisted on proper general staff papers being presented in Kitchener's absence. Murray wrote that, "I have never in my 40 years' service done better work than I did during the 3 months I was SIG's." Cabinet Secretary Maurice Hankey praised Murray highly as a real St. John the Baptist to Sir William Robertson, his successor as SIG's. However, H. Asquith, the Prime Minister, saw changes in senior military positions. Haig, about to be appointed Commander-in-Chief of the BEF, rejected Kitchener's suggestion that Murray be reappointed as Chief of Staff BEF. In his final days in office, Murray issued a paper urging concentration of effort on the Western Front, which was described by Robertson as the Bible of the war. Murray was forced out of SIG's on the 23rd of December 1915 and replaced by Robertson, a strong advocate of the single-front strategy. Murray's advice had been met with dismay from some Liberal members of the coalition cabinet, who were unhappy at the realignment of Britain's war effort towards total war and a massive commitment of troops to the Western Front. Augustin Birrell, along with Reginald McKenna, Walter Runciman and Sir Edward Grey, had contemplated joining Sir John Simon in resigning in protest at the conscription of bachelors, due to be enacted in January 1916. Birrell wrote to the Prime Minister that he and Runciman agreed that finance and strategic policy as expounded in Murray's long, unconvincing and frightening paper were more important than conscription. Egyptian command. In January 1916, Murray was given command of the British troops in Egypt and the Egyptian Expeditionary Force. Egypt was a base for the Salonika and Gallipoli fronts. In January 1916, Murray was relieved of operational command of British troops at Salonika, which was given to the French General Sarrail. Initially, General Maxwell still had command of Western Egypt until he was sent to Ireland to suppress the Easter Rising. Murray wrote to Robertson that the Australians were, from a physical point of view, a magnificent body of men, but had no idea of ordinary decency or self-control. Britain had 300,000 men in Egypt, many of them Anzacs or Gallipoli evacuees, supposedly to guard against a Turkish attack across the Sinai, which Robertson thought logistically unlikely. By July 1916, on Robertson's orders, Murray had shipped out 240,000 of them, including 9 infantry divisions, 3 independent infantry brigades and 9 heavy artillery batteries, most of them going to France, leaving him with 4 territorial divisions and some mounted troops. 11,000 Indian troops were shipped out, and another division to Mesopotamia and an 11th to France early in 1917, leaving him with 3 understrength infantry divisions and the elements of 2 more and 2 cavalry divisions. Trying to prevent another Turkish attack against the Suez Canal, Murray reorganized his troops and led a counterattack, winning a victory at Romani in August 1916. He now had to advance over the Sinai Peninsula, which consisted of sand in the north, gravel and clay in the center and mountains in the south. 400 miles of railway, 300 miles of metalled and wire-meshed roads and 300 miles of pipes had to be laid. Drinking water had to be pumped underneath the Suez Canal from the Sweetwater Canal in the Nile Delta, requiring the construction of filtration plants, reservoirs and pumping stations. The line on the frontier was 45 miles in width, half the width of the 80 to 90 mile front fought on the canal. Murray captured El Arish in December and Rafah on the Palestine frontier in January 1917. Lloyd George wanted to make the destruction of Turkey a major British war aim, and 2 days after becoming Prime Minister told Robertson that he wanted a major victory, preferably the capture of Jerusalem, to impress British public opinion. Robertson thought the capture of Beersheba should suffice, as more divisions were needed in France. However, Robertson was not entirely hostile to efforts in Palestine, telling Murray he wanted him to launch a Palestine offensive in autumn-winter 1917, if the war was still going on then. The object was to sustain public morale and, with a compromise peace leaving Germany in control of the Balkans increasingly possible, to capture Aleppo. Aleppo was more easily reached from Palestine than from Mesopotamia, and her capture would make untenable Turkey's hold on both regions. At this stage Russia was still pinning down many Turkish troops, although the Admiralty were not enthused about suggestions that the Royal Navy make amphibious landings in Palestine. It was agreed to build up Murray's forces to 6 infantry divisions and 2 mounted divisions by the autumn, as well as 16 Imperial camel companies and possibly some Indian cavalry from France. Murray was advanced to Knight Grand Cross of the Order of St. Michael and St. George on the 20th of January 1917. It was Murray who authorized E. Lawrence's expedition to join the Arab revolt against the Turks in Arabia, providing monetary and limited military support for Lawrence's attack on Aqaba. Initially skeptical of the revolt's potential, Murray became an ardent supporter of it later in his tenure in Cairo, largely through Lawrence's persuasion. By early 1917 the Turks had also withdrawn from Persia and had pulled back from Medina, which was besieged by the Arabs. Murray completed the defeat of the Senussi. In March 1917 at the First Battle of Gaza, a British force under Murray's command comprising 52nd Division reinforced by an infantry brigade from Eastern Force attacked Gaza, while the Imperial Mounted Division held off the Turkish reinforcements. The Australian and New Zealand Mounted Division reinforced the infantry attack, and together, they succeeded in entering Gaza from the north and capturing the adjoining hill of Ali Muntar. However, the determination of the Turkish defenders and the threat from large Turkish reinforcements approaching from the north and northeast ultimately led to a decision to withdraw. The First Battle of Gaza had been described as most successful, by understating British and exaggerating enemy casualties. This led to loss of political confidence in Murray. At the Second Battle of Gaza in April 1917, Murray assembled a larger force comprising the 52nd Division, 53rd Division, the 54th Division and the recently formed 74th Division, which was made up of brigades of dismounted yeomanry serving as infantry. However, the 6 British tanks, the British heavy guns and naval gunfire from the French coastal defence ship Requin and 2 British monitors did little damage and only served to warn the Turks of the imminent British attack, which faltered at all points. Again Murray decided to withdraw. The Second Battle of Gaza failed due to lack of artillery. The Second Battle of Gaza coincided with the failure of the Nivelle offensive. Reports of unrest among Russian troops after the February Revolution and an escalation of the U-boat war causing Robertson to prefer a return to a defensive policy in the Middle East, although this was not Lloyd George's view. Despite laying the plans for the ultimate defeat of the Turks, Murray was relieved of command and replaced by Edmund Allenby on the 29th of June 1917. Murray was mentioned in dispatches again on 3 November 1917. After Egypt, Murray was reassigned, becoming General Officer Commanding-in-Chief for Aldershot Command in October 1917 and having been promoted to full general on 25 August 1919, remained in post until 15 November 1919. After retiring from the British Army on 15 November 1922, he was advanced to Knighthood Cross of the Order of the Bath in the New Year Honours 1928. He was also Colonel of the Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers from the 22nd of August 1911. Murray died at his home, Makepeace, at Reigate in Surrey on 21 January 1945. Family. In 1890 he married Caroline Helen Sweet. They had one son. Following the death of his first wife he married Mildred Georgina Duna in 1912.